across the board, we need cash. When they're talking about central bank digital currency, we need to have banks that are still available to people with ATM machines. You don't have to go on an app or an internet banking. We need to make sure that it's not a programmable currency because, we know the CEO of the Bank of International Settlements said we'll track every transaction. We need spontaneity. We need the ability for people to do things that are not constantly being pursued. That's like the private right of a British person, let's say. We need to, in each area, we need to say, well, we got a situation. We don't want to have to show digital ID to get into everywhere, into hospitality, into public institutions, into places. We've already got far too much busybodying officialdom on the public sphere. If you're not buying something and you're in a street, you're constantly being filmed. You've got security guards often coming out, not the police, because their resources have been diminished and it's being passed on to private security firms that are unaccountable. We want a situation where, we've already all fought against some of the measures on the online safety bill that became the act, and taking out legal but harmful was important. But there's a range of things in there that get weaponized around the discussions of crime, non-crime hate incidents and hate speech. And the idea of hate speech and hate crime, which all gets molded in, if my words are like actions and words are like violence, then you're basically collapsing everything and saying anything you say, you should be imprisoned in the same thing for a physical assault. It's really draconian. It's very wrong. And we're saying that whilst that's been happening in the outside world, in the analog world, it's absolutely demonstrable in the online world. I mean, we don't have to look just at Canada and Trudeau. We saw what's happened with things like the Free Speech Union, Us for Them, and many others Together, and many others who all got impacted by debanking. Nigel Farage, of course. Whilst we all campaigned for cash with the Bank of England and for ATMs, we also challenged the debanking situation. And we said that it should not be possible for a bank to take you down for your particular opinions and views. And you can see that idea that some people's views, that the DEI and the ESG that dominates private and public institutions, if you start saying certain things, or if you're saying them online, or if your lifestyle is going a certain way, if you have too much petrol in your car, or perhaps you go on too many holidays, or you're not recycling in the right way, or just you kind of got the wrong kind of friend, that whole monitoring of what you're doing and grasping all that data, politically it's hugely problematic, and we do need it ring-fenced. But also from the point of view of data security, we saw in Portugal and other places, actually due to net zero, power cuts. Well, what happens if you're on programmable currency, all on digital dollar, digital pound? Fortunately in America, they're pushing back against that and they're going to exclude the central bank digital currency. But in the EU, they're moving ahead with it, as are 27 nations. Now, if you have a power cut and no cash, what do you do? Also, if you have a data breach, we've just seen that with Afghanistan, spies and soldiers have had their information revealed. They can't look after that for those guys. How are they going to be protecting the security of, our own privacy? They won't be, because they'll be kind of abusing it and using it to control and monitor. But these things are all very important for us to consider as part of the overview. So it's not just that you might have millions of people excluded from banking who are old and don't want to use apps, but the principle that you just don't want to do it that way. You don't want to have everything from your NHS records to your banking records to your lifestyle to all the different things you do all be managed and at a click of a button by some bureaucrat in the state, the government apparatus, who decides in this new round of pandemic preparedness that they're going to do in autumn under the term Pegasus, remembering they haven't really looked at the COVID inquiry at all at lockdowns and whether we should have had them or not. And then all of a sudden they say, well, these people, we've got this pandemic preparedness strategy, and now we know that, it'd be really great if they're all on digital ID. We can see where they are in their postcodes. We can see where they're going. We can see who they're talking to. And actually we can see, and then we can lock these things down and shut them off. All of this is no longer stuff of fiction and movies. They're all things that have happened already. And we need to make sure that we have a real ring of steel, not like the one Matt Hancock didn't have with care homes, but a real ring of steel of provision of privacy, autonomy, and liberty and our rights enshrined. And I do think that we will have a duty to uphold them and insist on it and push back. And I think that there's no inevitability to this, right? And it's a different thing to say that we might have medical records that are digitized with our doctors. That's one thing. It's different to the NHS app, but we might have some of that. And technology is important. But the idea that there's a central database that all the government can just monitor and control us all with is a real problem, and we have to fight back. And I think we can win that argument. But like in every generation for free speech, the argument keeps being had. It wasn't just they wrote it in the Constitution or we had it in England and the Civil War. There is a constant fight because some people think that the public just aren't good enough or smart enough or shouldn't be allowed to exercise judgment. And they are those that are autocratic and authoritarian. And then there are others who believe that absolutely the demos, the public, should be able to make these decisions. It's the only way you have a truly free and fair society. And you have to win arguments, right? And you have to convince the public about things. And we're grown up. And that's what, public life in a free modern world should be.